Hi, everyone, and welcome to JSA TV and JSA Podcasts, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in global connectivity, real estate, and the networks within. I'm Barb Mitchell, Executive VP and Managing Director here at JSA, and I am honored to be joined today by Keith Dunnavant, who is the Vice President, Offer Strategy and Portfolio Management, Data Centers for Munters. Welcome, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Barb. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been almost a year since you were last on JSA TV, so it's kind of nice timing in a way. I know that last time you were on JSA TV, you were talking about a few things. One was a big customer win that you had just, within that, I think it was that same week, you had just closed a deal on with your cycle split product. As well as I think there was a lot of conversation around trends in liquid cooling and just a lot of the buzz that's happening, the conversations and people sort of scrambling to find solutions to make sure they're the right solutions. So I'm hoping we can pick up from where we left off that conversation and talk more about data center efficiency and cooling technologies in the age of high performance computing. But of course, I just would love to start by asking you what's happened so far in 2024. So just pick up and tell us what's happened since we last spoke to you, 9 or 10 months ago.
Well, it's been an awful lot that's happened. And most of the activity has been around liquid cooling and that whole conversation and trying to understand where the market is heading and what does Munters need to be developing to satisfy the market demand. And so since that time, we have developed designs for coolant distribution units called CDUs of various capacities from 500 kilowatts all the way up to 1.5 megawatts of capacity. And these are devices that take chilled water from the central plant and convert that to a cooling loop that's isolated, usually using a propylene glycol water blend at 25% propylene glycol and water plus inhibitors. A common working fluid is a Dalfrost LC25 product. And that is super clean, super inhibited against corrosion and biological fouling so that it can be circulated to the cold plates that are inside the servers that picks up that heat from the chips and then circulates it back around to be rejected, ultimately through a brazed plate heat exchanger that has the facility water on the one side and then your closed loop technology fluid, they call it, on the other side. So a lot of development with liquid to liquid CDUs, as I said, 500 to 1.5 megawatt capacities and analyzing optimal pumps, optimal heat exchangers, optimal control valves, the right sensors to use for to make sure that everything is robust and reliable as possible. We've also done more development on our own, it's a liquid to refrigerant CDU, and that does the same thing. It's cooling a technology loop of PG25, but rather than connected to a chiller plant, it connects to our thermosiphon-based heat rejection platform. So it's got a refrigerant. Currently, it's 134A, and it's transitioning to 515B. So that's a two-phase. And the nice thing about it is that there's no pumps required on that side of the loop. The refrigerant moves purely through phase change and gravity, which makes it more robust. Plus, it gets really good economizing approach to the atmospheric temperature without using any compressors to cool that fluid down. So we have that development that's been rigorously tested and continuously refined. And that's currently just in a 500 kilowatt size, which is where the market tends to have a high demand. Another exciting thing that's in the works is a collaboration that we have ongoing with a leader in the field of two-phase cold plate technology called ZutaCore, an Israeli-based company. And they have a unique heat rejection strategy where their cold plates use the pool boiling technology to take a liquid refrigerant, which then boils on top of the chip and changes phase from a liquid to a vapor. And normally, that refrigerant is condensed by facility chilled water. So what's unique is that we're looking to take our thermosiphon-based platform and interface it with their direct-to-chip two-phase. So it'll be a refrigerant-to-refrigerant end-to-end heat transfer platform. And I can talk about some of the benefits, but obviously one is when you have two-phase, there's less mass flow of the working fluid to have to be circulated around. And so that has some efficiency gains. Plus, we would eliminate the pumps externally using SyCool. And perhaps the greatest benefit is eliminating the risk associated with a water leak or a propylene glycol leak in any of those numerous fittings inside the servers. If there is a leak, which, those connections are very robust and these events are really rare, but if it does happen, you have the potential to damage some very expensive IT gear. Just to give you some perspective, a single chip from NVIDIA might cost between $30,000 and $40,000. And that's just one chip. When you put it into the servers and you pile all those into a rack, you can easily have several $1 million worth of hardware in one rack. And it would be a very bad day if you had a leak and had hardware damage. So we eliminate that risk with a dielectric fluid like a refrigerant. So if there is a leak, it goes straight to a vapor and it doesn't harm your IT gear. Just to continue on with what's been happening, we recently announced an acquisition of a leading manufacturer of chillers in Italy called Geoclima. And that's really exciting for us. And, we have a lot of different ways to reject data center heat, but that's been the biggest element of our portfolio that was missing. So now having access to this technology from Geoclima, which uses primarily the most efficient compressors in the industry, which are referred to as mag bearing, but they're usually made by they're ZutaCore compressors, so they run really efficient. And so when you take that compressor technology with their unique circular condensers, which give more surface area and allow you to provide a chiller in a more compact footprint, you can get really good performance metrics. And those are available, up to over 2 megawatts of heat rejection capacity. What else is new? Lots of developments in the area of chilled water fan arrays. So the most predominant method of heat rejection in data centers by far is chilled water. So chillers on the roof or around the grade of the data center, moving chilled water around. And that chilled water goes to either chilled water fan arrays, which have chilled water coils and fans that cool recirculated air. So it's an air cooling device. Or now, as I mentioned, a lot of that chilled water is being used to go to CDUs to do the liquid cooling piece. We've also developed different SyCool platforms, I'll call it. We have a new, smaller size of a SyCool system, which is 125 kilowatts, which rounds our size range from 125, 250, 400, 500 is what we have now in kilowatts of heat rejection. And so the 125 is really for the smaller electrical rooms, transformer rooms, things like that. And just recently, we accepted an order for a top-of-rack CyCool system, which ordinarily you have the air cooling devices around the perimeter at the end of the aisle, so to speak, in a gallery. But it allows for a more compact footprint where the air cooling systems actually sit on top of the racks in a hot aisle containment. So it takes the hot air, runs it through, rejects the heat, and then puts it right back into the room. And so we're going to do a nice project for a customer in California using that top of rack technology. And speaking of California, we also recently completed something that's required in California for seismic concerns. When you have cooling units in a seismic zone, you want to make sure that they're going to continue to work if there's a seismic event. And so we have historically done seismic designs through calculation only, but this was a government type facility that wanted the equipment to be shake table tested. And this is pretty cool because now you get to put the machine on this table that's going to simulate a seismic event. And fortunately, all of our calculations and everything proved to be accurate, and we passed both on the CyCool 500 kilowatt condensers plus the evaporators. And this also had a pump package. We couldn't use the thermosiphon because the condensers were mounted on grade. And so the refrigerant needed to be pumped rather than being able to use gravity to keep that thermosiphon going. We've also got a new factory under construction in Cork, Ireland, about 120,000 square feet. That'll be coming online soon. And then finally, we're seeing for the first time a lot of activity in Latin America. And so we're tooling up our Brazilian factory to be able to manufacture, for starters, chilled water crawl units to support the Latin American market. And we will also be supporting that from our San Antonio, Texas factory. So that's a lot to say with the one question. But
yeah, I was going to say that maybe one of the longest lists of like just what you've accomplished in the last. It hasn't even been a year. What I took from this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really focused on innovation, growth geographically, growth through partnership and acquisition, but really finding those right solutions that are needed by the industry. And I think that can maybe take us into the next piece that I was hoping we could talk about. I know that last year you were talking about just the buzz around liquid cooling, and it was the hot thing and everyone wanted to talk about it. But your concern, I think at the time, was just how do we kind of weed through what are the right solutions and who are the right partners, and how do people know what they should be looking for? And I don't know if you want to sort of add to that. Is that the same now? What's changed in terms of the trends cooling for data centers?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the buzzword is liquid cooling in the industry right now. And liquid cooling, of course, is not new. It goes back to early IBM days for cooling mainframes. But what is very, very new is liquid cooling at the scale at which it's happening today. More recently, there's been a row of liquid cooled servers and a coolant distribution unit at the end, or maybe two of them. And that was one little row inside of a bigger data center. But today, with all of the AI work and any other high performance workloads, they really need to be liquid cooled. And so what the industry is struggling over is in real time having construction going on and sorting out in parallel the best practices for the first time to how to do this at scale. And you've got OCP and ASHRAE offering great guidance around the design practices, but these OCP working groups are ongoing right now, and they're just now defining the best practices for piping and what size should the ideal liquid cooling loop be. Because if you make it too big, the pipe sizes grow. If there is any leak or any issue, it gets magnified. And so, and what should it be constructed of? Is it made of stainless steel or copper or whatever? So there's a lot of material compatibility discussions because these fluids that you're circulating need to be compatible with all the metals and elastomers and gasketing and whatever it contacts. Otherwise, it can foul, and if it fouls, then it hurts those microchannels inside those cold plates that are in contact with the microprocessors, and then your mission critical fails. So lots of conversation around that. That's a huge thing. And you've even got, it's easy or easier if you're a hyperscaler and you have definite plans for what you want to do. But when you are a co-location provider, you're trying to make best guesses at what the customers that are going to come in are going to need. And that's a bigger challenge. And so there's a lot of jockeying around for the right size CDUs, for example, and or fan coil arrays. And what are the temperatures? What are the temperatures that we need to design these things for? Because that determines how much chill water or heat rejection capacity, and what are the temperature differences in the loop, because that sizes your pumps for the CDUs. So right now, they've sort of standardized around a metric of 1.5 liters per minute per kilowatt of heat rejection, which equates to that working fluid taking about a 18 degree Fahrenheit delta T. So if it goes out at 85 to cool the chip, which is pretty warm, but that's pretty typical, then it comes back at 103, and you've got to cool that back into 85. But as more and more of these even more high performance GPUs come to market, those temperatures need to get cooler because the heat flux coming off of them is even higher, which can no longer be cooled by that warmer fluid. It needs a colder fluid. And so a lot of stuff going on. And, there's also conversations around the single phase fluids, which is the water-based I'm talking about, versus the two-phase fluids. And I've already mentioned some of the things that are some of the advantages. By far, the largest deployments so far have been single-phase direct-to-chip cold plates. Immersion cooling, where you have a bath of a dielectric fluid with the servers dumped into it, has been promoted for quite a while, and there have been some pretty significant deployments. But so far, anyway, that's been taking lesser market share compared to the direct-to-chip cold plates.
Yeah, I think that you touched on a couple of things at just a minute or two ago, just about how it's really tough out there right now for the data center industry, for the builders and developers of these sites, that they're trying to keep up with this unprecedented demand at the same time as they are trying to solve for the future in a lot of ways, right? And when you think about the demands that things like AI are bringing about, how do you see that playing out, with respect to liquid cooling over the next 5 to 10 years? What do you see the evolution of this being?
Well, the one of the lead thermal engineers from NVIDIA has already stated publicly that his belief is that the chips of the future may need to be cooled with two-phase working fluids, which changes a lot of things relative to the PG-25 loop right now, and we're positioned for whichever way it goes, because it's like the stock market. You can't predict what it's going to do, but we look at all of the facts as to which one's going to be most sustainable, most efficient, lowest risk, all those types of things. And so we've made a little bet through our collaboration with ZutaCore that two-phase is going to be taking a bigger market share over time. So we believe that that is going to be a trend for sure. But while liquid cooling is the buzz, air cooling is not going away. There's no sunsetting of air cooling to 100% liquid cooling. Now, not all workload needs to be met by liquid cool. And for the novice out there that doesn't really keep up with this topic, when you cool with cold plates, there are still residual loads inside the server that have to be air cooled. So it's usually 75% liquid cooled, 25% air cooled, or maybe 80-20. But that air component, because the servers are getting more and more dense, we're seeing racks, 60 to 100 kilowatts per rack, whereas historically, it's been 5 to 10, trending upward, but still way below where the future is taking it. So there's going to be some interesting things there. I think power is a big deal right now, the lack of available power, and that's driving where the data centers are actually being constructed. And for those that are enterprise and they are trying to get permitted to build a data center at a specific site, they're having to wait because the utility doesn't have power available right now. So we've been involved with projects where we had to wait for several years until they could get power to the site. So that's driving some interesting trends around site-generated power, and nuclear is even being talked about more and more today.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, all of these things are so connected, and it's, it is one big ecosystem out there, and everyone relies on one another in one way or another. But Keith, I am aware that there's so much we could talk about. I mean, you're just in your, I asked you, what have you been up to this year? And the list was so extensive, and it's amazing to see the work that your team has been up to, been doing. And is there anything you want to close with? Is there anything you want to make sure that our audience hears before we, bid adieu until next time?
I'll just mention a couple of things that I think may be of interest. I mean, I think that we've got an exciting next 5 to 10 years as this all plays out and we determine the true utilities and benefits of AI, et cetera. There is just a massive amount of large data centers currently that are 100% air cooled, that I think we're going to see some innovation through retrofitting those to be hybrid data centers that are part liquid cooled and part air cooled. I think that's going to be interesting. We're seeing customers be concerned about climate change and asking us to design products that can do the data center heat rejection with outdoor air temperatures up to 135, which is not truly based on the actual air temperature, but due to, as you're rejecting all of this heat at a data center, and including if there's a utility outage and the generators are running, which generate heat, and then if the wind is blowing in the right direction, you might see air temperatures up to those high conditions at rare events. And, people think about that and they want to keep their customers' servers still working. So you've got all of that. The biggest lesson or the message that I would leave is that this is the time to be nimble. And that's what we're doing. We're working, sales and R&D are joined at the hip, and we're, as opposed to, historically, sales and marketing determine that we need this product for the market, and they go off and develop, and it takes a year and a half, and they come back with a product. That doesn't work.
Now, on Xperi, it came across very clearly, at least to me, when you were describing the type of work that your team has been doing, that there's a lot of thought going into that. And it's with an eye to the market, with an eye to the future, and with an eye to the innovation that is needed, really. So, yeah.
Makes life for an engineer very exciting, because you get to understand the customer's needs, help them solve problems real time through a lot of collaboration and utilization of a great R&D team and engineering team and everything else. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Keith, for joining us. I'm very much looking forward to a continuation of this conversation. Hopefully it doesn't take another 10 months and we can get the updates coming more regularly, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in again today to JSA TV and JSA Podcasts. Until next time.